The relentless Siberian wind howled like a banshee, a familiar soundtrack to my work. I am Alexei, and as an archaeologist, I've spent years unearthing the silent stories of the past. This dig site, nestled deep within the permafrost, was like any other at first. We were excavating a mammoth graveyard, a place of frozen time where the bones of giants lay undisturbed. Routine, that was my mantra, until the day the earth coughed up the impossible. It wasn't bone or tusk, but a stark, dark obelisk of metal, half buried in the ice. Its smooth, seamless surface defied logic, unlike anything I had ever seen. It was cold, intensely so, a cold that seemed to seep into your very soul. We attempted to chip away at the ice encasing it, but the metal seemed to repel the cold around it as if it was alive. Its very presence felt wrong, an aberration in this ancient landscape. And then the sound, low and resonating, a metallic lament that seemed to emanate from deep within the artifact. It was like the morning song of some forgotten god, echoing in my very bones. It wasn't just a sound. It was a vibration that seemed to permeate through everything. The world around us seemed to react to it, as if the artifact was calling out. I reached out, touched the cold surface, and the song changed, as if responding to my touch. It was a low, almost guttural sound, a moan that echoed with an unknown pain. It shifted again when Anya, my linguist, spoke to it, as if the artifact was listening, absorbing our very words. Each sound was unique, each a new note in a terrifying symphony. We were isolated, days from civilization, completely alone with this thing that listened, sang, and seemingly learned. The silence of Siberia was now haunted by this growing lament, and with each pulse, my dread grew deeper. Had I stumbled upon something that should have remained buried? Had I awakened a sleeping giant? The dig site, once a place of methodical excavation, was now a stage for an unfolding nightmare. The relentless wind felt less like a natural force and more like the breath of something ancient and malevolent, the very air vibrating with the artifact's unnerving song. My team, Anya and Boris, each reacted differently to this growing dread. Anya, a scholar of dead languages, became obsessed with understanding the artifact, poring over every nuance of its lament and any symbol the obelisk projected, as if she could translate its language. Her passion for the past was being tested, and her usual academic stoicism seemed to be faltering. She seemed to be drawn by the artifact. Boris, our engineer, was the opposite, his pragmatism replaced by a growing fear that was turning into paranoia. He started to dismantle our equipment, believing that the artifact was listening through them. My own past was filled with the pursuit of knowledge, but never had I felt so compelled and so afraid. I had always sought the truth, but now the truth seemed to be searching for me. The obelisk, whatever it was, seemed to be observing us, learning from our every action, our every word. The artifact's influence felt heavier every day, turning our isolated dig site into a prison of fear and doubt. We were becoming puppets on a string, our lives dictated by the mournful song. We were no longer just observers. We were now part of the artifact's story, and we didn't know what role we were meant to play. The metallic lament intensified, growing both louder and more complex, its melodies shifting from mournful dirges to a cacophony of unsettling harmonies. It wasn't just a sound. It was a language, and the artifact seemed to be trying to tell us a story that was becoming increasingly sinister. It started to imitate our voices, twisting our words into grotesque echoes as if the artifact was mocking us. The symbols that it projected on the snow started to resemble distorted human figures, as if the artifact was trying to show us something that was terrifying. The more we tried to understand the artifact, the more confused we became. Boris succumbing, to his growing fear, started to become erratic, seeing threats in every shadow. He believed that the artifact was alive and it was trying to control us. He sabotaged our radio, believing that the silence could protect us, that the artifact could hear our every thought. My relationship with Anya grew closer, as we shared a passion for the past, but now we had to face a terrifying future together. Anya believed that the symbols held a key to understanding the artifact's nature and purpose, while Boris started to question her sanity, seeing her obsession as a threat. I found myself torn between my loyalty to Boris and my growing attraction to Anya, as well as a need to understand the terrifying implications of the obelisk. The isolation was becoming unbearable, the biting cold and the haunting melody of the artifact creating a sense of claustrophobia that was suffocating us. The object was reacting to our fears, to our doubts, and it was feeding on our terror, making the situation more desperate, more terrifying, more real. We were no longer just researching a strange artifact. We were caught in the middle of a battle. We were not prepared to fight. The increasing intensity of the artifact's lament began to fray the already tense dynamic between us. Boris, driven by a pragmatic fear, started dismantling our communication equipment, convinced that we were somehow broadcasting our fears to the object. He argued that silence was our only protection. Anya, however, became obsessed with the projected symbols, meticulously recording them, convinced that they held the key to understanding the artifact's purpose. She started to have strange dreams, visions of ancient cities being destroyed, visions of a great darkness falling from the sky, a darkness that was connected to the object. I found myself caught in the middle, torn between Boris's desperate pragmatism and Anya's growing obsession. My relationship with Anya started to deepen. We started having long talks at night, where we spoke about our fears and about our hopes. We were both driven by our love for the past, and we were now both facing the same terrifying future. My growing closeness to Anya caused tension with Boris, who had always seen me as his intellectual equal. Now he felt like we were choosing sides. The supply of fuel was also dwindling, and the weather was becoming more erratic, making it more difficult for the helicopter to come in to get us. The isolation was no longer just a geographical reality. It was a psychological one, a prison, built out of fear and mistrust. We were trapped, not just by the cold, but by our own doubts, and the increasing volume of the singing was making it harder for us to think clearly, to make any rational decisions. The artifact seemed to be feeding on our fear, and the deeper we descended into its mysteries, the more hopeless we became. We were playing a dangerous game, and the stakes were getting higher. One night, while Anya was studying the Sumerian symbols, she noticed a pattern, a series of symbols that repeated over and over, as if it was trying to communicate a specific message. She deciphered it as a warning. The sleeper awakes. The warning was clear and terrifying. It was not just an artifact. It was something else, something that had been dormant for millennia, and that was now waking up. Then, as we were processing this new information, the object pulsed with a new energy, causing the ground around it to tremble. A dark liquid started to seep from the metal, a substance that seemed to be alive, pulsing and moving on its own. As the black liquid touched the snow disappeared as if it had never been there. The lament changed again, transforming into something sharp and guttural, a sound of malevolent joy. Boris, terrified beyond reason, tried to attack the obelisk with his pick, but the pick was thrown out of his hands by an invisible force. The liquid swirled, forming shapes in the air like tentacles, and a voice echoed in our minds, a deep, resonant voice that seemed to come from the object itself. "You have awakened me." The voice was both terrifying and mesmerizing, a call that I felt resonating deep within my soul. It wasn't just a sound, it was a thought, an intention that seemed to rewrite the very fabric of our reality. This was not just an archaeological discovery, it was an awakening, and we were its first witnesses. The ramifications of the awakening were immediate and devastating. The object's influence intensified, causing the temperature to plummet. The wind became a howl, and the darkness felt thicker, more oppressive. Oris was completely consumed by paranoia, seeing the liquid everywhere, convinced it was trying to consume us. He became aggressive, threatening anyone who approached him. Anya, on the other hand, was strangely calm, almost serene, as if she had accepted our fate. She spoke of an ancient pact, a destiny that we were powerless to stop. I tried to keep us together, to find some semblance of a plan, but the object's influence was becoming overpowering. The liquid was spreading, consuming the ground, and it started to form strange shapes, resembling monstrous figures that seemed to move and to stare at us with their empty eyes. The singing became a cacophony, a symphony of dread, a signal that the end of our world had started. My own mind was not safe either. I could feel myself drifting into a world that was both familiar and alien, as if my mind was becoming one with the object. The line between observer and observed was gone, as the artifact was now dictating our reality, creating a new world, a world made of sound and terror. We were not just trapped, we were being consumed. We had unleashed something ancient and terrible, and now we would pay the price. The opening of the portal wasn't the end. It was a terrifying new beginning. Boris, consumed by a desperate mix of fear and anger, began to arm himself with anything he could find, convinced that our only chance of survival was to destroy both the artifact and Anya. He started constructing makeshift weapons, using anything from his tools to broken pieces of the digging equipment. His pragmatism twisted into a dangerous obsession with violence. Anya, now completely under the entity's control, became a conduit for its will, communicating its intentions in a chilling blend of ancient languages and strange whispers. She started to speak of a cosmic cycle, a convergence that was meant to happen, and our roles in it, the opening of a gateway for something from the other side. The artifact itself began to project new symbols, images of planets being consumed, civilizations reduced to dust, and a monstrous entity that seemed to be waiting on the other side of the portal. The urgency of our situation became unbearable. As the portal grew larger, the darkness that was spilling from the gateway was growing stronger. The subplots were not just conflicts between us, they were also a race against time, as the world was being rewritten. We were no longer just fighting for our own survival, but the survival of our world. My connection with Anya, now tainted by the entity's influence, became both a source of fear and a sense of desperate longing. The past was becoming a distant memory, and the future was being shaped by forces that we could not control or understand. Our fate was no longer in our hands. The real turning point came when I understood the entity's plan. One of the symbols that Anya was projecting showed me a vision of myself, but different, altered, twisted by this cosmic power. I was one of them. It wasn't a projection, it was a memory of a possible future. The artifact had been there all along. It was not just buried, it had been sent as a beacon to bring the other side to our world. It was an ancient mechanism designed to corrupt, to turn those who came into contact with it into vessels. The entity wasn't just using Anya, it had used many before. It had used civilizations before that had tried to understand it, to learn from it. I realized that I was not immune, that I was being drawn to the other side. The voice that was speaking in my mind started to feel more natural, more real, more welcoming. The entity was not just trying to open a gate, it was trying to recruit, to add more to its ranks. I felt a dark power pulsing within me, the same power that was controlling Anya, and I suddenly understood that I had a choice to resist or surrender. It was not just a revelation, but a call to action. This was not my destiny. This was my opportunity, my chance to break free from the cycle that the object had created. I had to choose, to go along or to rebel. This was the turning point, the moment that changed the direction of the story, taking me down a new path, a path that was not laid down by the entity, but forged by my own choices. The realization that I was a potential vessel for the entity had a profound impact on me. It was no longer just about survival. It was about preserving my own identity, my own free will. Boris, witnessing my change of heart, stopped his rampage and started to look at me with a renewed hope, a new respect. He started to understand that violence was not the answer, that there was something more, something bigger that we needed to fight. He offered to work with me, to help me close the portal, to save Anya, to save our world. He seemed like a different man, humbled, but ready to fight. Anya, on the other hand, was completely under the entity's control, her voice a hollow echo of her former self. The entity used her to try and convince me to join them, to give up my fight. The portal grew larger, the darkness expanding like a gaping maw, threatening to consume everything around it. The artifact's song transformed once more, this time into a chorus of voices, all speaking at once, all calling out to me, trying to tempt me, to sway me. The very fabric of reality seemed to be tearing apart. The consequences of my choices were now real, palpable. A world that could be saved or destroyed, all depending on what I decided to do next. The future of our world was now in my hands. My newfound understanding of the entity's nature and my own potential vulnerability forced me to reevaluate my approach. I realized that fighting with violence or force would be futile, as the entity was far more powerful, a force of nature, a cosmic storm. It couldn't be killed. I had to use my own knowledge, my understanding of the past, to find a way to close the portal, to banish the entity. I decided to follow Enya's research, to understand the symbols, to use the entity's own language against it. I had to use what the entity was telling me, the language of the past, to understand what the future could be. I started to decipher the symbols using the ancient Sumerian and other languages that the entity was projecting, and I found patterns, a sequence that could be used to disrupt the entity's power, to close the portal. Boris, embracing his engineering skills, helped me build a device, using the materials at hand, a mix of our tools and some of the strange metal from the obelisk, a device that could channel the energy of the symbols to break the link that was connecting the entity to our world. I had to embrace my own potential. I had to become more than just an archaeologist. I had to become the person that I was meant to be, someone that was strong enough to fight against forces that I didn't even understand. Anya, despite being under the entity's control, was still present. A small part of her was still there. I used that connection. I talked to her, to the small part of her that was still listening, and she helped me find the last piece of the puzzle, a symbol that was hidden in the entity's song, a symbol that I had to sing myself. My journey was no longer just about survival. It was about becoming the best version of myself, to embrace the past that I loved, and the potential that I had always had, a transformation that was both terrifying and empowering. I understood that I could not do this alone, that I needed to have faith in others, and that I needed to trust my instincts. With a plan finally formed, we moved into the preparation phase, knowing that our time was running out. Boris, using his technical expertise, refined the device, ensuring it could effectively channel the specific energy frequencies of the symbols that I had found. We repurposed our old communication equipment, using some of the components to amplify the signals. Anya, while still under the entity's influence, became a strange kind of guide, her movements and utterances subtly shifting, revealing some new details that we needed to complete the ritual, her small parts of resistance helping us against her will. She revealed that I was the one who could activate the device, and that I was the one who could close the portal, as I was the only one who could sing the ancient song of closing. The subplot with Boris, his paranoia and his obsession with violence, had reached its resolution. He had accepted his new role and had put his skills to a better use. The tension at the dig site was reaching its peak. The portal grew larger, the darkness from it started to take over the sky, and the metallic song was now a deafening chorus of voices, all calling out to us. We worked tirelessly, driven by a mix of fear and hope, knowing that the final confrontation was imminent. We had to trust each other. We had to work as a team. The dig site was now a battleground, a place where the ancient past was merging with a terrifying future. We were no longer just archaeologists. We had become warriors, prepared to face the cosmic entity with the tools that we had created. We were ready as we could be. The climax arrived with a deafening crescendo of sound and energy. As I stepped forward, the portal pulsed, and the entity's voice boomed in my mind, trying to intimidate me, trying to persuade me to surrender. Boris activated the device, and I began to sing the ancient song, a guttural melody that resonated in my very core, and started to disrupt the entity's hold over Anya. The symbols that I had deciphered started to light up on the device, and a beam of energy shot out, directed at the portal. The darkness started to swirl, as if it was trying to resist, and the entity used Anya as a puppet to attack us. The battle was fought on two fronts. A battle with the entity itself, and a battle for Anya's soul, both of them intertwined, both of them essential to our success. The entities started to send dark shapes through the portal, creatures that were as terrifying and as alien as the entity itself, that we had to repel using the device that Boris had created. The tension in the dig site was unbearable, the fate of our world hanging in the balance. It was now or never. The entity's voice grew weaker as my own song grew stronger. The struggle was intense, the outcome uncertain. It felt as if the world was being torn apart, a battle between light and darkness, a struggle between two different realities. It was my past against the entity's future, and it was my time to decide how this story would end. The portal flickered, and then collapsed, the darkness receding as the light returned, a blinding, beautiful white light. The entity's voice was silenced, and Anya collapsed free from its grasp. Boris, exhausted but triumphant, deactivated the device. The metallic artifact fell silent, its power depleted, its mystery unsolved. The immediate aftermath was one of stunned silence, a sense of relief that washed over us like a healing balm. The fight was over. The immediate threat was gone. But the world had changed forever. Years passed, and the dig site was abandoned, the obelisk buried once again, a secret left for the ages. I returned to my life as an archaeologist, forever changed by my encounter with the entity, forever haunted by the memory of the metallic song. Boris, after all that happened, moved to the city and worked on technology that was designed to help humanity be aware of these kind of threats. Anya, recovering slowly, used her skills to warn the world, to make sure that such an event would not happen again. The portal was closed, but the question remained, was the entity truly gone, or was it just waiting, sleeping beneath the ice? Perhaps one day, someone else will unearth it again. Perhaps this was meant to happen. This is my story, a story of fear, of courage, and of the unknown. What did you think? Did the ending surprise you? Was our world saved? Perhaps the entity still waits out there, and perhaps our fate will be different. Click on the next video, where we will talk about similar discoveries and new possibilities. Perhaps if we listen, maybe we can learn to sing the songs of salvation. Maybe we can be the ones that change the course of history.